Two objects cannot occupy the same point in space at the same moment in time. The corner races at you. You have perhaps a crisis of identity. Am I a sportsman? Or a competitor? If you get into one of my cars, you get in the wind. Slow.
Enzo.
You're going broke.
How?
You spend more than you make.
So what do I do?
Win the Multimedia, Enzo.
Or you are out of business.
This is a gun pointed at our head. You should assign me control of your stock. I have to have all the cards in my hand.
Well, half the cards are in my hand.
All of us are racers. It's our deadly passion. Our terrible joy.
I wonder if we need me back.
How can I stay away?
If Anthony is looking for a scapegoat, then here I am.
You were supposed to save him! You promised me he wouldn't die!
The father deluded himself!
Two objects cannot occupy the same point in space at the same moment in time.
Enzo. Go beat the hell out of them.
For as long as I can remember, I've had a fascination with racing. And I'm going to share a story that barely seems believable.
Jensen Button crosses the line, takes the checkered flag. How do you feel? It's really amazing. Only one team in their debut race in the history of the sport have been able to get pole position and then go on to win.
This is the story of Brawn GP. Why do people say that you were the 1 pound Formula One team?
I gave £1 to the Honda executive, allow us to buy the team, to keep the team alive.
This is the only option we've got on the table. It's this, or the team gets shut down.
Can you do this? Yes.
Best way to become unpopular very quickly is to start winning.
We're a team that's come from nowhere. No one expected us to be here.
They went too far. There was something against the rules. This was the start of the war.
This team that everybody just wanted to survive is killing us.
I'm going to win the championship.
The knives are out and they were after us.
You either push to the limit or you're nothing. We push to the limit.
People believe in him because he looks innocent.
Yet really behind the scenes, a smiling assassin.
I think you're all smiling assassins.
It was a really scary time.
This is about survival.
Formula One, once it gets into your blood, it'll never let go.
Do you feel like Ross Brawn was the luckiest guy in the world? Or do you think he was really clever?
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver. And we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Hey guys, this is Matt Hagan, 3-time funny car world champion, and you're watching Drafting the Circus.
And Iowa's starting to separate, a 19-point lead. Knocked away, Marshall, Clark,
him. An 11-0 Iowa run. As one of the arena cameramen got hit there after the bucket, and the officials stopped play.
Right here, this is Caitlin Clark all on her own, jumping out to double team. She sensed that she could get the steals, that she could create some havoc, and she did, and got the layup the other way. Let's go.
Gabby Marshall approves.
Driver, start your
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to Drafting the Circuits, brought to you by Sinista1 Productions. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we do our 2023 in review show. Joining me, I've got Levi and Richard Uden. How we doing, fellas?
Doing good.
It is good to be back, fellas. I missed y'all.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? Yeah, where you been? The only guy that's here less than you is Louise. And speaking of Louise, you may wonder, why did we have a clip from the Women's Elite Eight basketball game to lead off our motorsports show? Well, simply put, I mean, if you notice, the cameraman that got clocked there was our own Luis Torres. You know, when he's off on assignment, this is one of his assignments. He's the cameraman in that venue when he's not out, photographing hockey games and baseball games, right? So, but I just thought, for our most compelling moments in 2023, Luis getting beat up by a girl is right up there. So, and he's not here to defend himself, which makes it even more fun. But Luis, we miss you, buddy, again, and thanks also for your sponsorship of the show. Luis Torres Multimedia, check him out. Also, thanks to the FERRARI film and the Alzheimer's Association. So, but before we get into the review of 2023, Formula One wrapped up this past weekend, and we had a couple of other championships decided this past weekend. Brody Kostecki won Australian Supercars. Theo, what's his last name? I just looked it up. Won the Formula Two. Theo Pourchaire won the Formula 2 championship. Although I don't know where he's going to land because there's going to be very few changes in Formula 1 next year. The only
well, just not spoil my bit, Frank.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So,
read my notes.
So the big news that nobody expected was that Max Verstappen went ahead and won the championship. I mean, it was a long shot.
Yeah.
But he got it done. So I know Ron Howard will make a movie about this one day. So
I want to know how a sports podcast, a racing podcast, not one of us picked Max Verstappen to win a race this entire season. Like, what? Are we sleeping on the job here? We picked everybody but him.
Because we picked second place all year, remember?
That's right.
Because we decided that Max was going to win all the races. So anyway, I've got a list of records that Max assigned his name to this year. And Keith got some graphics and some photos he's going to scroll by here while I go over this list. It's a pretty lengthy list, what he's accomplished just this season. Highest percentage of wins in the season. Most wins in the season. Most points in the season. Most consecutive wins. Most podiums in a single season. Highest percentage of laps led in the season. The only driver ever to lead 1,000 laps in a season. Highest percentage of laps led in the season. Most consecutive wins from pole. Most total wins from pole in a season. Biggest points gap between first and second. Most consecutive races as the championship leader. Most consecutive point scoring finishes. Most hat tricks. Most consecutive top 2 finishes. Here's an interesting one. The most pit stops by a driver in a single race to still win. I found that one to be interesting. And the only driver to win 3 times in the same country in the same season. So, by the time Max is done with Formula One, there's going to be very few records that don't have his name on them. Mind you, he's a little over halfway there to number 1 on the all-time win list, but I would say his career is less than half over. He's still got plenty of good years left to go. So, Richard, you also did some number crunching. You have some stuff you'd like to share with us, so I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. So, every week post-race, the motorsport.com, which is probably one of the largest motorsport publications in the world, they encompass the Autosport website and journalists, and a couple of the guys that have been on the show in the past have written a few articles for them. So it's a great website for all forms of motorsport, but it's high up there on the Formula One scale. And they do a driver rating poll. Their editors give a rating for each driver for each race, and also the readers of the website can put in their own ratings. And normally it comes out pretty close, within a point or two. So throughout the year, because I've got nothing else better to do with my time, I sort of collate all those values and run a little bit of analysis on those numbers at the end of the season. And some of it makes for pretty interesting reading. And also, I think it backs up a lot of the assumptions and observations that most of us have been making throughout the season. So, not surprisingly, the driver with the highest average rating throughout the year was Lando Norris. No, sorry, Max Verstappen. Lando actually came in second. Lando was second on the average ranking.
Lando did have a good year, yeah.
Alonso was third, Leclerc 4, Hamilton 5th, Russell 6th. So there's the usual suspects up there that you'd expect. But I think one of the most interesting ones was when you compared the average point score between teammates. And I think there's been, I must admit, sorry, I mentioned it, I didn't include AlphaTauri in here because they swapped drivers throughout the season. So I've only looked at 19 drivers here, and 9 of the teams. I haven't looked at AlphaTauri because they did do a driver swap. So if you look at the 9 teams that I analysed, the 3 teams with the biggest differential between the 2 drivers are probably the 3 teams with the worst driver of the 2 having the most question marks against them. In Red Bull with Perez and Verstappen, Williams with Sargent against Albon, and Aston Martin with Stroll against Alonso. And it was Perez to Verstappen was the biggest delta, then Williams, and then Aston. And throughout the season, those, especially with Perez, pretty much the second 20 races, pretty much. He had half a dozen good races at the start, but pretty much after that, post Miami, Perez has been on the chopping block, I think. And those 3 guys we've always talked about as being the ones, in danger. And the opinions and the statistics tend to back that up. Perez, on the average score, ranked 12th of the averages, but yet finished second in the championship. So there was a 10-place delta between his average rating per race and his actual points finish. The guys that had the best results on that scale were actually Albon and Ocon. and Norris, they all ranked 4 places higher than they actually finished in the championship. So there's some really interesting numbers there, but it does highlight, what we've been saying. Perez, Sargent, and Stroll are in danger, or not in danger, but have struggled against their teammates respectively.
So let me ask you this real quick while you're on the subject of performance against your own teammate. Which teammates were the most evenly matched with one another?
Very good question. There. Grab my notebook here. The AlphaTauri guys. No, sorry. Alfa Romeo. Bottas and Zhou. Both pretty crap in reality. 16th and 17th. So not great. The Mercedes guys were pretty close. Hamilton and Russell, and they were pretty close. As were the Alpine guys as well. Ocon and Gasly, pretty close there. But outside of that is the spreads that you'd expect to see. So those are the guys that were pretty close. Yeah. But
thank you.
But the next stage of what I wanted to discuss here was, you mentioned a little bit earlier there, Frank. Theo Pourchaire won the Formula 2 championship. Nowhere near a Formula 1 drive. Drugovich, nowhere near a Formula 1 drive. You look at the champions. I don't have the list of champions of Formula 2 from the last few years, but a lot of them, Mick Schumacher, nowhere near it. Schwartzman, I don't think he won the championship, but again, nowhere near. Callum Ilott had a really good finish. IndyCar now. Look, a few of them have won. A few of the current F1 grid have won championships, but I think definitely in the last 3 or 4 years, the value of Formula 2 has started to wane a little bit. And they're picking drivers more through their young driver development program, or for financial reasons, than they are for their Formula 2 performances. And it's sort of starting to, in my mind, question a little bit of where Formula 2 sits. Yeah, it's a great breeding ground because you do have a lot of guys coming through, but does success necessarily deliver a guaranteed Formula 1 seat? It doesn't really, and I think fundamentally, that's a flawed concept in a way. Something's not quite right with that, because these guys are working their asses off to win championships, and basically they become a test driver. The one that's probably closest to getting a drive, and probably would do if Lance Stroll's dad didn't earn the team, would be Drugovich. You imagine he would at least be given a shot in there. There was talk of Drugovich going to Williams to replace Sargent. Again, but do Williams want to be loaning drivers? Williams have made great progress in the last couple of years. And in the past, they probably would have loaned a driver off somebody, but they're like they did with George Russell. He was a Mercedes driver, and they loaned him for 3 seasons. But they're probably looking to stand on their own 2 feet. They've got their own young development program now. Logan Sargent, I think he finished 6th, was it, in the Formula 2 championship? He just scraped a super license.
Yeah, I think arguably, 5th, actually, yeah.
Arguably, it's shown this year by a relatively poor performance compared to his teammate. Now, if they'd had somebody on par with Albon, they probably still wouldn't have caught Alpine in the championship and finished 6th. Williams were, to my mind, the success story of the season, to finish 7th in the championship with what James Vowles did there. And a lot of other people as well, but obviously he's the figurehead. He's the guy that's been brought in, and he's done, to my mind, a fantastic job there. But it's a really interesting season, and if they do keep Sargent, I think this is probably the first season or 2 seasons where the drivers that finish the final race of season A, they all start with the same car and the same team in season B. I don't think it's ever happened before. There's always been some drivers move, and I don't think we're seeing that this winter, which is it's pretty surreal in a way that they've reached that level of A, consistency, and B, lack of talent coming through to take up some of those seats. Because you could argue that some of those guys out there probably don't deserve, is the wrong word. Every Formula 1 driver deserves their seat, but there's other guys that there's guys out there that have done their time, maybe not been as successful as some would have wanted. Now it's the cutthroat world. It's like an NFL quarterback. There's only 32 quarterbacks in the league. Even the guy that's a backup is still pretty damn good, but he's just not good enough. And he's had his opportunity. And now it's time for somebody else to step up. And I think you're starting to see that with a handful of drivers in Formula One now that are hanging around, maybe starting to get a little bit past their sell-by date.
Yeah, definitely. So, but you can almost say the same thing when it comes to junior series about like Indy NXT. Indy Next, you've got several guys that have come and moved up to IndyCar and just been unsuccessful. Now, mind you, there's a handful of them that have done great. Colton Herta, Pot of Award, guys like that. We're still up in the air to see how Linus Lundqvist does and how Dave Malukas' career pans out. But the racing landscape is
won races.
Yeah, Kyle Kirkwood, yeah, absolutely, he's winning races. But there's tons of guys, your Oliver Askew's and Spencer Pigot's and all those guys who came and went, Ed Jones, So, and even if you look at NASCAR, the guys winning the Xfinity Championship more often than not end up staying in Xfinity, for a career. It's a big step to the big leagues, I guess, in any race series. So.
And it's almost like a lot of these guys that do come through are picked before they get to Formula 2. Or they bypass Formula 2. I mean, Verstappen, okay, he's a freak of nature, that guy, to put in the kindest possible terms. But he never did Formula 2, or GP2 as it was back probably when he was around there. He just went straight into Formula 1 from Formula 3. Verstappen was the same. Not Verstappen, sorry. Vettel was the same. He never did Formula 2.
And both those guys are absolutely exceptional drivers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Hamilton did, but he walked the championship in his first year.
I guess it's like skipping the 5th grade when you're in school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not completing college and going straight into a draft for one of the major sports. So
LeBron James kind of thing there. Yeah.
So these series are great. They're entertaining. There's some really, really high quality racing in there. But it's got to have its value. At some point, it's going to start to lose that. NASCAR used that tagline, where names are made, or something along those lines. And a lot of the guys that you do see in the Cup Series now do come through the Xfinity Series. But performance in the Xfinity Series doesn't necessarily guarantee performance or a top drive in the Cup team. And it's almost like these guys, as I said, are picked before they get to that level. When in the NASCAR world, when they're in the ARCA series or the Truck Series, their career's mapped out, and it doesn't really matter what they do in Xfinity. They'll, get a Cup ride at some point.
Yeah, they'll end up whatever the plan is. So, all right. So Lee, you're being quiet over there. So
I'm sucking in all the numbers here. I do. I'm a numbers guy. It's just the science behind it all fascinates me. I listening to the numbers. It's phenomenal what Max has done this year in the Red Bull team. And you said Max is still young in his career, and he is. And I think the only thing that's going to stop Max from dominating for the next decade is Max himself and the team at Red Bull.
I think if Red Bull gets the 2026 regulations wrong, and somebody like a McLaren or Mercedes steps up, or even Ferrari gets it right, it's gonna look how quickly Hamilton went from being a consistent winner to he's 2 years plus since he's had his top 7 on podium. And again, and Mercedes still has a very good fast car. They're just the gap between them and Red Bull is incredible. So it doesn't take much for somebody to catch Red Bull because mind you, everybody's looking at what they're doing. So, but Lee, my question to you was: did you get a chance to watch the Vegas race? Because there's a lot of negativity surrounding this one going in, but I've got to say they put on a pretty entertaining show.
It was okay. So the entertainment value was fantastic. The racing I thought was fantastic. It's some of the sportiest racing I've seen in F1 all season. I think personally, F1 swung and missed for the fences big time here. I'm friends with a lot of true diehard F1 guys, guys that travel to Europe and stuff to see races. And I asked them about Vegas, and they were like, no. Why do I want to go to Vegas when I can go to Italy or Monaco or Silverstone for half the price to get into Vegas. I mean, Vegas was a big media publication blitz, but I think F1 missed the mark reaching the true fans. I mean, you know, because the average guy, I can't afford to go there. You know, I couldn't afford a ticket. I don't know if many average people that could. So yeah, that's where I think F1 missed the mark.
Yeah, they put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. But as far as the race itself, I thought they did. It was the track ran a lot better than I felt it would. Especially
when they found somebody that could weld a manhole cover.
Yes. After the initial troubles.
Story. That's a funny story because the civil engineers, I talked to a couple people, and the civil engineers in Vegas in Clark County had signed off that all the manholes were secured. They were either tack welded in place, or that particular manhole cover, the water cover, was a screw in, and they signed the report. It says all were secure. Well, they were securing
them.
Not
Formula One secure.
No, well, listen. The other thing is they were securing them during the daytime when it was hot and the metal was expanding. They didn't take into consideration at night that metal contracts and they become loose, and that's exactly what happened. That is, you know, it's been controversy, but I read the report, and then they said, well, you know, they did it at the daytime. They did it at like 2 p.m. The race wasn't run until 10 o'clock at night. Big temperature change there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yep. You know, whoever gets it gets it.
Carlos Sainz got it. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sure did.
So we went. So Max won Vegas. Surprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Abu Dhabi. We were Abu Dhabi last week. Richard, what do you think of Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, it wasn't a bad race. I mean, it's always a strange sort of race, especially when there's no championship on the title, because it's like the last day of high school. You know, it's like you know, and there was a little bit of like posturing going on in the background for like second and third and fourth and fifth in the championship or whatever it was, but it was all a little bit, to put it mildly. And you know, 22 race seasons are great, or it should have been 23. 23 race seasons are great. Next year we've got 24.
It was 23 this year, wasn't it?
No, we lost Imola.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 24,
for the
right?
Yeah. And China.
That's right. We lost 2 of them this year. You're right. You're right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And you know, it was almost like, okay, here we go. Just woo, Max won. Yeah, do a few burnouts. Well, okay, let's go. You know, it sort of lost that impetus and that sort of sharpness a little bit, I think, which was a bit of a shame. But I thought there was some good racing out there. You know, Abu Dhabi's been considered for a while now as a track that they haven't been able to overtake at, but they've made some changes to the circuit layout, and I think it's helped considerably. And you know, there's some good moves out there. You know, some guys didn't cover themselves in glory. Perez had a bit of a brain fart and managed to crash into Norris when Norris was trying to let him through, which was just dumb.
Yeah, big surprise. Perez having a brain fart.
And then Perez got all petulant like a little kid on the phone, on the radio, and started criticizing the steward, which is a great career move. But okay. So you know, it all wrapped up. Vegas was great. You know, that the race, as Lee said, the racing at Vegas was great. The show was terrible. You know, the racing at Abu Dhabi was pretty good. The show was meh. You know, we just lost enthusiasm a little bit for it. But I think
that's a symptom of having a season it's a little too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and especially when you know, if it was close and it was, you know, battling backwards and forwards, and you know, the championship went down to the last race. Great, bring it on. Have as many races as you want. But yeah, with Max having won it in June or whenever he did, you know, it just lost it. Those last half dozen races were just a little bit of a processional and going through the motions for some of the teams. And you know, the fact that Red Bull put so little effort into those last few races and still won them all it was pretty impressive. Really.
Demoralizing for the rest of the field, I tell you. Yeah.
But I think that, you know, the Vegas race, I know we didn't have a show last week to discuss the Vegas race, but the Vegas race for me highlighted one of the issues and one of the areas that Formula One has to be very, very careful about, one of the things that I enjoy most on the race weekends are actually, on the TV coverage, is the grid walk that Martin Brundle does, 15, 20 minutes before the start of the race. This guy knows everybody in the paddock, on the grid. And, sometimes they get some celebrities down there. Other times he's talking to drivers, he's talking to team principals, he's talking to engineers, he's talking to these sort of people. And, okay, as an engineer, I'm biased. I do find the discussions with the engineers and the people involved in the sport more interesting. But sometimes, he gets these celebrities and they're just like, don't have a clue. I mean, that, put it bluntly, the arsehole that he had at Brazil, what was his name? Yeah, who just blanked him, or just was, just go away. I'd rather you go into the crowd and interview a spectator than that piece of shit who was at the race. I'm sorry. And he left halfway through the race as well. This guy, I don't know what he was. It was like he was some musician guy who, whatever. Waste of space. I'd rather than turn around and have, if say there's 50 celebrities on the grid, give 50 random fans grid access, before the race and interview them and get people's real, interaction. The people who are enthusiastic about the sport, who are passionate about it, and not some guy like, I'm here for, whatever, Simon Leclerc or whatever. It's like, what?
Yeah. Who was the one? It was I think it was at Austin a couple years ago. Was it Megan Thee Stallion? She had her bodyguards kind of trying to rough up Brundle a little bit. Tell him to get away from her. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, you're on their turf, Megan.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let the man let the man do his job. Yes. Yeah, so.
No time for that crap at all. No time for it at all. And I think Formula One is in danger of going too far in that way. Yeah, it's great to see. Hey, look, if you've got a celebrity there who's interested in the sport, who goes to the races, who knows what they're talking about, fantastic. I mean, there's guys like Gordon Ramsay. He loves his Formula One.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
at half a dozen races a year. And whenever Martin Brundle interviews him on the grid, he's informative. He knows what he's talking about. He can have a good, good conversation about it. Fantastic. Don't have a problem with that. When you get, who was there? The Shaquille O'Neal. For a start, Martin Brundle was interviewing his nipples, basically. And, he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. What's the point? What is the point? It makes him look an idiot. It devalues the entertainment. Just don't do it. Formula One has got to be so careful, I think. So careful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So we're doing some young driver evaluation testing out there in Abu Dhabi, and tire testing as well over the next couple of days. So far, George Russell has wrecked a car, which I guess, it's your last use of the
I think.
Your last use of the 2023 car. Might as well just see how fast you can get that thing going, and still hold on to it. So, but you got, I want to say it was Ocon was fastest over the two sessions. Pot of award out there. Really had a good time in the McLaren. He said he really enjoyed driving the car for that simple fact that he was able to, because when he did the free practice one earlier in the year, he had to be real careful to not wreck the car, not have anything break before he turned it back over to Lando Norris. But here again, last use of the 2023 car, see what it does, man. So he really enjoyed himself there. So Formula One off for a couple of months, and then we're on to another long season next year.
Full 24 races, hopefully.
Hopefully, you never know. So, we've had at least one race canceled every year since 19, right? At least one. Yeah, since the COVID stuff started wreaking havoc with everybody not just in sports, but all kind of industries. So Lee, let's go over NHRA 2023. Richard and I did our best to bring you the results from the finals there. But again, you're our expert there, and we did our best. We did our homework, and so
you guys did good.
Yeah. So So again,
flattery will get you nowhere.
so again,
I don't understand this stuff.
Yeah. So again, we talked about it's kind of a bit of a transitional season for NHRA, as they just absolutely lost a couple tracks this year that they haven't really had time to think about replacing yet. They lost. They had to move one event due to weather.
New Hampshire.
Yep, New Hampshire, the one you wanted to go to. Yeah. So that's your luck. They had New Hampshire Nationals in Tennessee. So I mean, if you want to try to figure out the logistics of that, go ahead. But Lee, let's run down some of the highlights of the 2023 season, and I know certainly Matt Hagan is on your list.
Of course, I mean he's the 4-time champ. You can't devalue what he did this season. He is honestly he's a show favorite. He's other than that, he's just consistent. He goes out there and he just gets the job done. He gets the consistent bracket wins, and then that pushes him on deeper into the rounds, and he ends up winning those, and then he gets number 4, which is really good. I think if he keeps it up and with the team backing, he'll probably see a couple more out of Tony Stewart Racing. Leah, his teammate, she had an awesome, outstanding year as well. I'm looking forward to seeing where that team is going. There's see where Tony goes. Is he going to step up to the top alcohol class? The other one that is a surprise talk this season around the pits was Angel Sampay. She is a former pro stock motorcycle rider. She was teammates with Antron Brawn on the U.S. Army team, Schumacher team, and she's stepped up and gotten her top fuel class, or top alcohol license in the last half of the season this year. So see if she steps up and comes up to the top alcohol classes. Going to be a fun off season, I think. Safety wise, car wise, I think we're right in the groove. There's not going to be many changes. A couple minor tweaks here and there from what I saw. The track situation, like you said, I think we lost 3-4 this year. I don't know what NHRA is going to do to replace those. I don't think there's really any plans right now. But we could step up. We could go, we could do back-to-back races like we do in NASCAR, visit 2 tracks at one, in a single year.
Do they ever do like a double header? I know they did the one in Bristol, but that was an odd situation. But that would be one way to kind of extend the amount of points gaining opportunities.
That's correct. And they do. I think Vegas and Charlotte are really like the only 2 that they have visited twice, with the exception of Bristol. And I think it is an opportunity to put these tracks kind of far apart on the schedule like NASCAR does. So you get some spring races there and you get some fall races there. You get different track conditions, which really might be helpful. And it, good points events, I think are gonna be a must for this upcoming season, whether they shorten the season or they just double up on a couple races throughout the season. That's going to be part of the off season.
Right. And then, of course, new title sponsor in there in the form of Mission Foods. So that's exciting.
They did a really good job with their Taste to Chase this year, 2 Taste to Chase kind of co-sponsorship thing. They ran kind of like a side little race that really seemed to work out. The fans really enjoyed it. So glad that they're stepping up to a prime sponsorship. With the circuit, I think it's going to bring in a lot of diversity to the sport. A lot of people that may not be accustomed to seeing or getting to experience the sport are going to have that opportunity now, and I think that's really going to grow the sport. So,
yeah. So, and again, Mission. I've seen what they've done in their, minor sponsorships at IndyCar. They've got great actors. They've got great sponsor activation events that they have going on at the IndyCar races. So I imagine they'll do some very similar stuff with the NHRA. So good on them. All right. So when did we start up the season? March?
Yeah, it'd be just mid-March is when the Gator Nationals roll around. That's our Daytona, another Florida kick off the season in Florida. So mid-March, I think the schedule gets released just before Christmas. So we got a couple more weeks before they release the finalized schedule.
Figure out everything you're gonna do. Yeah. So, all right, fantastic. So let's talk about what's shaking in IndyCar. So again, as I look back at 2023, I think there's still, the most compelling story there is, the Alex Palou contract drama, which there's been more news on that this week, as Palou has made some statements and stuff and filed some court documents where he admits to breaching the contract. He says, yes, I'm in breach of contract. But what he's disputing is the fact that the McLaren says he owes them $23 million, which is kind of ridiculous. And if you kind of read through some of the articles that have been written and what McLaren is seeking damages for, a lot of it is hypothetical, and Palou's biggest reason for breaching the contract is it seemed like he said they overstated what his chances would be to actually become a Formula One driver. They dangled a carrot that basically didn't exist. But McLaren's wanting money for future sponsorship agreements, potentially loss of prize money, things that you don't know would materialize or not. You know what I mean? And, I can understand them wanting their maybe money back for using the sim. Definitely the $400,000 they paid him in advance money. He's going to owe them that. But this boosting the number up to, 23 million, I think is just, it's like when we're going to bargain, let's start high and you start low and we'll meet in the middle somewhere. So it's for the lawyers to decide. But at the end of the day, I feel like, Palou was there where he needed to be with Ganassi. I'm not sure how he was dazzled by McLaren bullshit, but he was dazzled by bullshit. And
how do you bullshit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not that McLaren ride is a bad ride. I mean,
no.
Now, mind you, they didn't win this year, but they're competitive. They're up there. You know what I mean? And they've Pato's won, I think, 3 races with the team, and they've got the potential to win. They certainly have the resources, but I think once Palou, got the stars out of his eyes and realized Chip Ganassi was probably a better move for him to stay there, which, the fact that he won the championship kind of solidifies that there too, so he's won 2 championships in 3 years with Chip Ganassi. So, hard to make a better argument than that, right? I mean, why does Scott Dixon stay with Chip Ganassi year after year after year when people have offered him big money to leave? Well, because all he does with Chip Ganassi is win championships, So plus he feels at home. He's been there for that's one of the longest driver team pairings in motorsport. You figure Dixon is 2003 or 2002, I think, is when he first was running with Ganassi and Kart. So he's 20 years. He's 2 decades as a Ganassi guy. So if that doesn't tell you something about what they're offering somebody who's one of the finest drivers in the series that can go anywhere he wants and decide to stay there, that tells you something. So I mean, otherwise, there's for next year, they're still talking about a possible non-points race postseason in Argentina. And then Mark Miles made a little statement. He was talking about a high-profile event they're looking at. That he says we're kind of close to it, but I can't tell you what it is yet. So, a high-profile event. My guess is it's going to be a street race somewhere. I would imagine that. It's not going to be Baltimore. But they had a pretty good race there for a couple of years. I mean, if you want to see what an Indy car looks like going over train tracks, and there's the place right there. That was a good one. Or if you want to see a IndyCar when it looks like going through the air, that was where was that? San Jose. They had a little bump in the course that would launch the cars. So, yeah, I don't know where they're looking, but I think they were, because he mentioned NASCAR in Chicago and Formula One in Vegas. So obviously, I mean, this tells me they're looking at a street race somewhere. But all street races, I believe it when I see it. And I said that about Chicago until the day the NASCAR cars were on the track, and I said that about Vegas till the day they were on the track. There's so much legal red tape, bureaucrats, NIMBYs, and all kind of stuff to deal with to get a street race put on. And then even once you get it going, the history of them lasting a long time are few and far between. So, but I mean, if they get some eyes on the sport, get some good money there, yeah, we'll see. So, otherwise, in IndyCar, a couple of seats up in the air still. You've got AJ Foyt's. The one car is open. I think Ben Peterson is returning in the 14. The other seat's open. Ferrucci's still in the frame for that, but Callum Ilot's name is being bounced around, and the 2 Dale Coyne cars are yet to be announced. Grosjean was announced that he's going to Hugo Hollinger to replace Callum Ilott. So, which gets Callum out of an uncomfortable situation there. I think that kind of the relationship started well and it deteriorated towards the end there. I really don't think they did a good job of supporting him when the Argentinian fans were just lambasting him on social media. So, but if Ilott ends up with Foyt, Foyt is now Penske's driver development team. That's kind of a good situation to be able to have some eyes on them from people at Penske who put together pretty good cars. So, Richard, what do you think? What were some of the other big stories in IndyCar that caught your eye this year?
Big stories in IndyCar. I mean,
I'm still pissed that they made the 500 green with 1 lap to go, but
yeah,
I still think that was.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, all the New Garden fans think it was great, but I still think that's highly unprecedented and hardly safe. But they did it.
Yeah, I think you look at. For me, the biggest takeaway from IndyCar, I don't know, was it a surprise? Was it a shock? I don't know. It was the struggle by Penske. I mean, they still had drivers who were competitive and up there, but you look at Penske and you really do expect them to be winning championships with the driver lineup they've got, and to, I say, not struggle, but not have that cutting edge that you expect from a Roger Penske organization. Something was missing, I think, in that organization this year, and but you can say the same for Andretti.
Yeah, Andretti's been missing for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think we all know what that is. And it goes back again, and again, this isn't a surprise. This is just maybe an overall reflection of it. The methodology and diligence that Ganassi shows year in, year out. They're not a flashy team. They're not a, banging the fist on the table, look at us, aren't we an amazing team? They just do their thing and do it bloody well and go out there, get results, get wins. They don't go out and sign the big name drivers. They sign the drivers that fit in with their DNA, and partly a lot of that DNA has been molded by Scott Dixon over the last 21 years, as you mentioned, Frank. And the founder, heir apparent to that in Palou, who just goes out there, does his work, does his, if he could win his championship by a point, he'll take it. He knows, he calculates, a bit like the Alain Prost of IndyCar in a way. Yeah. And Scott Dixon was the same, and I think it's refreshing to see, rather than but again, not taking this in a negative way, no criticism of the guy because he's infinitely better at driving a car than I am. But the Colton Herta methodology if you listen to people talk about Colton Herta or listen to people around the Andretti team talk about Colton Herta or certain people talk about him, you think he'd be a 27-time champion or something by now, the way they go on about him. The guy's won a handful of races and very, very well. Crashed out of more leads than races he's won. Tried to, and the rest of it, I hate that sort of stuff. It's like the NFL players or the quarterback who walks around, thinks is the greatest thing ever and throws 6 interceptions in the game, but still tells everybody how great he is in a press conference. Let your driving do the talking, and Ganassi got that down to an art, and I love it. And long may that continue.
Yeah, you can say the same about Newgarden. I mean, mind you, Newgarden does have 2 championships in the bag, but if you look at what cost him this year, it was his own mistakes.
Yeah,
he was instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm gonna settle for 3rd today or settle for 4th today, get a good points play finish," and push it too hard and end up making a mistake. And more than once. From that. And he dropped all the way to 5th in the final standings, and his teammate, and McLaughlin. He did the best of the new guy at Penske. McLaughlin did the best of the 3 drivers there. Finished 3rd in the championship. And won a race this year, and then of course Will Power, who's coming off a championship season last year, is kind of noticeably absent this year. He's like nowhere to be seen. I don't think he even finished in the top 6 in the championship.
Yep.
So so it'll be interesting to see how Penske comes back from that, but it'll be more interesting to see how Ganassi handles running 5 cars out of their stable.
Well,
now. I mean, that's a monumental undertaking right there, right? Now, I
think with that, as we mentioned, with that mentality that they have, I think it'd be far easier for them to do that. You look at, again, we compare it to, but, I don't know the ins and outs and workings of the Penske organization, but with Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, and Scott McLaughlin, they've got 3 pretty big superstars,
Absolutely, yeah.
And how do you, as not Roger, obviously, but Tim Cendric, for example, how do you handle those egos? I don't think there's any egos at Ganassi. I and I may be wrong here. I could quite easily see the engineering debriefs are far more constructive at a team like Ganassi than there are Penske. I say I may be wrong, and if I am, I apologize. But they go out there, they do their thing. The Ganassi group and organization, led by Chip and the people he has around him, are instilled to make the team the best team possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you still obviously want to win. In any form of motorsport, the most important person to beat is your teammate, but you still do what you need to do to develop that team and get better, because the only way you're going to be better is if the next, everybody on the team is better. And I think that Ganassi has, from the outside anyway, appears to have that mentality in a more of constructive way than some of the other teams that have struggled with larger fields like Andretti and Ganassi and Penske in the past. So I think the mentality of the team there will certainly suit them better moving forward.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got to look at. I mean, Ganassi has run 3 and run 4 before, but they've never had more than 2 cars winning, other than the one odd fluke where Charlie Kimball won a race in 2013.
You limit your number of superstars. You put guys in there that'll go out, do a job, get you data, support your teammates, play the part, and settle for finishing 10th in the championship, because they know that's their level. They know that's where they sit, and they know what their job is. They don't go and try out and be, you look at all the 3 Penske drivers, they all expect to win races. And if they don't win a race, they're going to be pissed off. Well, if you finish second to your teammate, should you be pissed off? Yeah, internally you are, but that shouldn't affect the team as a whole.
Right. All right. So, Lee, what was your take on the IndyCar? This is your first year kind of really paying attention to IndyCar. So, and then we got about 10 minutes left to discuss stock cars.
It was as my first season watching IndyCar from a reporter standpoint, it was very educational and interesting. I learned a lot this year. It was nice because I don't have anything to compare it to. So this is really a good baseline for me this year as far as following IndyCar. It was a good season, I thought. Like the Indy thing, you said you were really disappointed that it was, one lap left, with the green flag on the last lap. As a person, as a reporter, that is totally foreign to me. So that was a good. No, honestly, to see stuff like that, because I'm like, why is this so important? But then to hear why it was so important, or it was so, it wasn't the right move to do, that was super educational for me. So I think, looking back at it, I think it was a great baseline season for me, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I learned this year, and I'm going to put it against next season and see how much, see if I become any better as a, not just a fan, but as a reporter for IndyCar.
All right.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Lee. So, 2024 season starts in March. There'll be some testing in February, and we'll begin the hybrid era in IndyCar. See how all that goes, provided that we don't have a setback because we were supposed to have these things like 2 years ago, from what I recall. But they've been testing those things, and evidently there's a few concerns, but they got some time to work on it. So we'll catch up with IndyCar again in March. So NASCAR, Ryan Blaney won the Cup championship. Bit of a surprise there. I mean, Blaney's always been a contender.
Competent.
Competent. But I'm not sure that anybody went into this season or even through the mid-season would have picked him as being the Cup champion, and yet here we are. And that's a symptom of how the playoffs are structured. It's in the same fashion that like Richard, I think you said all the teams that did well during the regular season were nowhere near the World Series. So so same kind of thing there. So congratulations to Team Penske and to Ryan Blaney. And as we go into next year, we've got a couple different of the manufacturers are got new body styles. Keith, you have that photo of the new Toyota, the new Camry. All right, so Richard, I mean, you guys are testing this now. So I mean, what's the vibe out of Toyota, man? How are you guys feeling about the new body style?
Yeah, so make its track test debut next week in Phoenix with the Jacobs Racing and the Legacy Motor Club cars. I mean, this isn't like a Formula One car launch. This isn't like a body style that's going to provide massive enhancements in performance. My understanding of how NASCAR regulations work is NASCAR has a body, and back in a few years ago, it used to be an old Dodge body that was like the gold standard for aero, and any car that a manufacturer produced, Toyota, Chevy, Ford, had to fit within a certain window of aerodynamic performance around that Dodge body. And of course, there's new things, big splitter, the splitters have changed a lot with the current generation cars. The rear spoilers have changed. They've now got rear diffusers. So how these cars go about generating downforce and performance is very different. So as I say, that may have changed recently with the current generation of body, but we're not going to suddenly find, lap times with this bodywork, I don't think. It's more for running in a window of performance and allowing the marketing tools to closely match the street car. This car is styled on the 2025 Toyota Camry road car that you will be able to buy next year, which will replace the existing Camry, which the existing Toyota body is based on. So it's more of a marketing tool than a performance tool. Yeah, we will, look at all the aero modeling and the CFD work and find areas that, maybe aren't as efficient and it could be tidied up, and they'll go through the motions and the processes of doing that. But yeah, fundamentally, you're not going to see. So it's not like a new front wing or rear wing design in Formula One that's going to suddenly gain you a quarter of a second a lap. Excuse me. NASCAR worked very, very hard. To avoid that from happening.
Yeah.
So it's more of a, just polishing the product rather than outright revolution. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some good data, on that in a couple of weeks, or sorry, next week. It's been in the wind tunnel and through CFD for a long, long time and collected some great data there. So yeah, Ford have already had a new body this year. I don't know what Chevy's plans are if they're waiting another year. But
I think Chevy's coming back with the Camaro this year, and then 2025 they've got something planned. But
yeah,
both Ford and Toyota are going to have something that looks a little different on the track just next year. Yeah,
and by the time you put a wrap on it and sponsors logos, you're not really going to know.
Still looks like a NASCAR, So
exactly. So.
All right, so the big stories in NASCAR this year, I think it's like utterly the half of the Hendrick team seem to disappear. A lot of people would have kind of picked Chase Elliott as an early championship favorite, and then yet, despite the injuries and suspensions that caused him to win races, when the races he was in, he just wasn't there. While his teammate Byron was looking every bit a potential champion all year long, and Larson, of course, is a perennial winner in the series. But I've got to overall, kind of call this season a bit of a failure for them. Other than Byron, but by their standards, they fell short. So and these
it wasn't as obviously you look at, there are some caveats and probably an asterisk, putting next to Bowman and Elliott, they both missed a number of races through injury, so it wasn't purely performance based. Although it's one of those difficult things, isn't it? These guys are so good, you want them back in a car as soon as possible, but did they bring Chase back too early from after his breaking his leg, or Byron when he fractures his back? I'm sure if you ask them, they'll say no, I was ready to go. But sometimes, if you'd waited 2 more weeks, would you've actually got more out of them in the long run of the season than bringing somebody back? Because, we've all, I'm sure, had injuries in the sporting context. I know I have, that you think, I can do it. And the discipline involved to turn around and say, no, 1 more week or 2 more weeks is really hard, because you don't always see the long-term, damage to it. And, you look at, I think that was certainly the case with Chase Elliott's circumstance. He lost that rhythm, lost that confidence.
He did mention how much pain he was in after one of the races there. So I think even he kind of realizes he probably push it and come back too soon. So, but he's got the whole off season to recuperate and come back stronger for next year. So.
I think he had shoulder surgery recently.
I believe so. Yeah, guy's a mess.
Yeah.
Oh God. And
but he'll be. I think he'll be back stronger than ever next year.
The guy I'm still kind of wondering about is Simon Pagenaud. Here's a guy that will he be back next week? Well, I think he'll be back next week. And then I haven't heard a thing. He's not assigned onto the grid for next year at all. So I don't know if he hasn't come out and announced that he's retiring, but his name is not in the frame for any rides in IndyCar. This doesn't mean that he may not pop up in sports cars or something, or but he's just been awful quiet lately. So I think his recovery is not going as quickly as he would like it to. So and again, these sort of head injury kind of things you got to be real careful about. You don't want to be a Neil Bonnet and doctor told me never to race again, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Oh God,
that's a true story. Yeah. So Neil Bonnet, remember him? Yeah. He doctors told him never to race again. If you have one more big hit, could kill you. Yeah, right. Well, who was right? The doctors. Exactly that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. So I was going to go look through our bold predictions from last year. And then I remembered, if you recall last year, our season ending show, we actually had author Mark Dill on the show promoting his the children's version of his book, Legend of the Super Speedway. And then right when we went off the air, and I say goodnight to everybody, then I said to you guys, oh shit, we forgot to do bold predictions. So everybody's off the hook for not getting your prediction this so because I know, Lee, you were going to predict that Chase Elliott would win a dozen races and the Cup. And Richard, you were going to predict that Max Verstappen's era of domination was over, and that Logan Sargent was going to win 5 races. So, all right. So, Lee, give me one bold prediction for 2024.
One bold prediction for 2024.
Yep, it can be any racing series or women's Elite 8 basketball if you'd like. Since
Women's Elite 8 basketball. I'm actually going to say Max Verstappen next year is going to miss the podium by 4 times. That's going to be my prediction. He's not going to podium in 4 different races next year.
Okay. All right. Richard.
Ooh, bold predictions. Let's go. What's yours, Frank? Give me a minute.
What's mine? I'm going to say that my bold prediction is that in IndyCar and in Formula One, McLaren makes a run at the championship and is in contention for both those championships.
That's pretty bold. I like it.
Gotta be bold, man. Hey, one year I got the bold prediction right. I said if Takuma Sato signs with Andretti, he'll win the Indy 500. And guess what the hell happened?
He did.
Yeah. So.
I'm going to go in Formula One. There will be 2 first-time race winners.
All right, so Lando Norris.
I'm tempted to go for 3, but I think we'll stick with 2.
Say Lando Norris and who else would you put in there?
I'd put Piastri in there.
Piastri?
I'm not counting his sprint win. Not counting his sprint win.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it. Gasly's won a race. Ocon's won a race.
Yeah. Leclerc's won races. Sainz won races.
But yeah, I think I go for two new race winners.
Because every now and again you have that odd race that just out of nowhere that's affected by rain or something like that, which is kind of how Ocon and Gasly got their wins. They were just some oddball races that they happened to be right place, right time, and hold their car together when other guys couldn't. So, all right, 2 new race winners. Say that.
That's what I think. Let's go for one more. Do we go say Leclerc wins the championship?
That's bold.
That is wicked bold.
Leclerc finishes second in the championship. Then Max wins, but Leclerc pushes him.
That's less bold, right? So
Perez disappears.
Perez gets fired mid-season.
Yeah.
That's not really bold.
Replaces him.
Not really bold, right? So, all right. So anyway, listen, it's been a wonderful 2023 season. I'd like to wish all you guys happy holidays. And tonight we were on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. Do you want to know why? Because Keith wants to watch the new Godzilla movie tomorrow. So if you're not doing anything tomorrow, go watch the new Godzilla movie. Maybe run into Keith at the movie theater if you're up in the New England area. So, but anyway, let me thank you, Lee. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Keith Hayes and Sinista1 Productions. Thank Who's Radio Network, Alzheimer's Association, Ferrari movie, Luis Torres, Motorsport, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Spotify. But thank you, everybody else. We'll be back on the air in roughly sometime in February, right around Daytona Speed Week's time. So, again, happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year 2024 when it comes around. And we'll talk to you in a couple of months. Until then, good night.
Thanks for watching Drafting the Circuits. Make sure to follow Drafting the Circuits on Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, and YouTube. Drafting the Circuits is a Sinista1 production.